In the year 2025, the United States finds itself at the very center of global debates, controversies, and conflicts. Donald Trump, having returned to power, is not only reshaping domestic politics, but also redefining America's role in the world. From heated confrontations in Congress to international disputes with long-standing allies and adversaries, every move of his administration has created ripples across the globe. To understand what is happening today, we must carefully trace how these tensions emerged, how they are being managed, and why they are shaping the destiny of not just America, but the entire world. What we see today is a nation deeply polarized from within, and a superpower struggling to project strength and unity abroad, while simultaneously managing internal chaos. Trump's re-election was hailed as a victory for his supporters, who believed he was the only leader strong enough to stand against what they called the globalist agenda. His rallies drew massive crowds, filled with slogans of taking back America and putting America first once again. Yet behind this triumphant return, America was already facing economic struggles, racial tensions, and the pressure of competing powers rising on the international stage. The promises of bringing jobs back, of restoring traditional values, and of reasserting US dominance abroad met with the reality of an interconnected and increasingly multipolar world. And this reality is far more complex than campaign slogans. Inside the US, Trump faces one of the most divided Congresses in modern history. Negotiations with lawmakers have turned into daily spectacles, with shouting matches, walkouts, and endless debates over immigration, healthcare, tariffs, and foreign aid. His administration has sought to push mass deportations, stricter border controls, and a drastic cut to foreign funding. While his base celebrates these measures, critics argue that such policies are weakening America's moral authority and eroding its traditional alliances. Journalists capture the chaos of lawmakers storming out of sessions, courts intervening to block executive orders, and mass protests filling the streets of major cities. From Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles, America looks like a country at war with itself. Internationally, the Trump administration has reignited old tensions and created new ones. Relations with the European Union are at their lowest point in decades. Trade disputes have escalated into tariff wars, with European leaders accusing Washington of undermining cooperation at a time when global challenges require unity. Germany and France have openly criticized Trump's approach, describing it as reckless and self-centered. NATO meetings, once symbols of Western unity, have turned into confrontational gatherings where Trump demands higher payments from allies while questioning America's role in defending them. Behind closed doors, European diplomats whisper about a future where they can no longer rely on Washington and must chart their own path, independent of US dominance. Perhaps the most volatile theater of confrontation is the Middle East. Trump's support for hardline policies has inflamed tensions in the region. Military operations have escalated, drone strikes have resumed, and diplomatic efforts for peace have largely collapsed. Iran, emboldened by partnerships with Russia and China, has resisted US pressure, while Israel finds itself both emboldened and isolated, as American backing is no longer guaranteed to command global support. Meanwhile, humanitarian crises in Gaza, Yemen, and Syria continue to worsen. International aid organizations warn of catastrophic consequences, yet Washington's policies appear driven more by political calculations at home than by humanitarian concerns abroad. Russia, under Vladimir Putin, has seized the opportunity to exploit America's divisions. Strengthening ties with China, North Korea, and other anti-Western nations, Moscow is presenting itself as a counterweight to Western dominance. The war in Ukraine, far from fading, has intensified, with new offensives pushing Europe into deeper involvement. Trump's ambiguous stance on Ukraine has confused both allies and adversaries. At times he has spoken of supporting Kyiv, at other times of cutting aid and negotiating directly with Moscow. This inconsistency has shaken trust in US leadership and emboldened Russia to push forward with its plans. In Beijing, Xi Jinping watches closely, confident that a distracted and divided America cannot effectively counter China's global ambitions. The domestic situation in America continues to fuel these international challenges. Immigration remains one of the most explosive issues. With mass deportations underway, entire communities live in fear of raids and family separations. The images of children separated from their parents at border facilities have sparked outrage both domestically and internationally. Civil rights groups accuse the administration of cruelty, while Trump supporters insist that he is simply enforcing the law. These policies have strained relations with Latin American neighbors, particularly Mexico, which faces not only the human consequences, but also economic disruptions from the deportations. Latin American leaders are increasingly turning to China for partnerships, weakening America's influence in its own hemisphere. Economically, the US finds itself on shaky ground. Tariffs and trade wars have increased costs for consumers, and inflation remains a serious concern. While Trump continues to promise a return of manufacturing jobs, automation and global competition make such promises unrealistic. Farmers have protested in the Midwest as export markets shrink, while tech companies complain about restrictions that limit their global reach. Wall Street remains volatile, reacting to every new policy announcement with uncertainty. Yet Trump continues to frame these struggles as necessary sacrifices for American sovereignty and independence. To his supporters, this rhetoric resonates deeply, but to critics, it represents economic mismanagement disguised as patriotism. The media plays a crucial role in this conflict. Trump's attacks on journalists and news outlets have reached new levels, with accusations of fake news dominating every press conference. State-run media in Russia and China amplify these divisions, portraying America as a declining power consumed by internal chaos. Social media platforms are flooded with propaganda, conspiracy theories, and disinformation campaigns, many of which are designed to deepen the divisions within the US itself. In this environment, truth becomes difficult to separate from lies, and the American public finds itself more polarized than ever before. Global reactions to this turmoil are mixed. Some nations quietly celebrate the weakening of US dominance, seeing it as an opportunity to assert their own power. Others, particularly smaller nations dependent on American security guarantees, are alarmed and anxious about what a retreating America means for their safety. In Africa, leaders are increasingly turning to China for infrastructure deals and investment, bypassing Washington altogether. In Asia, Japan and South Korea debate whether they should build their own nuclear deterrence, as confidence in US defense commitments wanes. Around the world, a new reality is taking shape, one where the United States is no longer the unquestioned leader, but just another power struggling to manage its own crises. For Trump himself, the spectacle of conflict seems to be part of the strategy. His rallies remain fiery, filled with rhetoric about enemies both foreign and domestic. He casts himself as the savior of America, battling against corrupt elites, hostile media, and ungrateful allies. Every criticism becomes fuel for his narrative of victimhood and resilience. His supporters, unwavering in their loyalty, echo his slogans and defend his every move. To them, the chaos is not a sign of weakness, but proof that he is fighting the establishment with all his might. Yet to much of the world, this chaos is proof of a superpower in decline. What arises is simple but profound. Can America continue to function as the leader of the free world while being so fractured within? Can it balance the demands of global leadership with the realities of domestic turmoil? These questions are not only about Trump's presidency, but about the very future of the United States. History teaches us that great powers often fall not from external enemies, but from internal decay. Rome collapsed not just from invasions, but from corruption, division, and loss of civic virtue. Could the same fate await the United States if it cannot resolve its divisions and restore unity? Critics argue that Trump's policies are accelerating America's decline by alienating allies, weakening institutions, and deepening polarization. Supporters counter that he is restoring national pride, protecting sovereignty, and putting American citizens first. Both sides are deeply entrenched, leaving little room for compromise or dialogue. The result is a nation where political violence is rising, where families are divided, and where the future feels uncertain. In this environment, America's global image suffers and rivals gain strength. In the Middle East, new conflicts emerge almost daily, with Washington unable to build lasting coalitions. In Asia, China advances its Belt and Road Initiative, signing deals with nations that once looked to Washington for support. In Europe, Leaders speak openly of a post-American world, where their security and prosperity no longer depend on the whims of Washington. Meanwhile, in Latin America and Africa, alternative partnerships flourish, reducing America's influence further. The shift is unmistakable. The unipolar moment of US dominance after the Cold War has ended, and a new multipolar world is being born before our eyes. Yet despite these challenges, it would be premature to write off America entirely. The US remains a military superpower with unparalleled technological and cultural influence. Its universities, corporations, and innovations continue to shape the world. The resilience of American democracy, though tested, should not be underestimated. Throughout history, the United States has faced crises that seemed insurmountable, only to adapt and emerge stronger. The question now is whether this resilience can prevail once again, or whether the current divisions will prove too deep to overcome. For ordinary Americans, these global debates often feel distant, overshadowed by daily struggles with jobs, healthcare, and safety. But in reality, the fate of the world is tied to the decisions being made in Washington. When America is divided, the world is less stable. When America turns inward, rival powers seize the chance to expand. And when America stumbles, global institutions built on its leadership begin to crumble. The stakes could not be higher, delays, not just for Americans, but for people everywhere who live in a world still shaped by US power. In the end, the story of Trump's return to power is not just about one man. It is about a nation at a crossroads, torn between competing visions of its future. It is about allies questioning their loyalty, adversaries sensing weakness, and citizens grappling with what it means to be American in a world that is rapidly changing. It is a story of conflict, resilience, fear, and hope. And it is a story that will continue to unfold, shaping the destiny of America and the world for years to come.